what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello everyone, welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. I'm Alan, this is Chris.
Hello.
Chris, how you doing?
Doing good. We're ready to talk about some movies.
Absolutely. Same here. Here's what we've got lined up for today's episode. We've got two reviews of movies that you can currently check out in theaters, the film Prisoners and the film The Spectacular Now. After those film reviews, we're going to have a little bit of movie news. We're going to dip into our inbox and talk about some questions we got from some listeners. And then we're going to end up the show with our recommendations of a movie or something you can check out online that we think maybe you have missed in the recent past. But with that, let's go ahead and start off first with our first big review. This is the movie. It was just the number one movie in the box office this past weekend. We're going to talk about it a little bit. It's the latest from the actor's side, Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Viola Davis, directed by Denis Villeneuve.
Sounds good.
Sure, that'll work. Is the film Prisoners.
Can I take Joy to our house?
Wear a hat, please. You're just getting over a cold.
Where are your sisters?
I can't find them.
Anna? Joy?
Wait, I checked the entire house. They're not here.
Dad, there was this RV, and they were playing on it. We thought there was someone inside. Detective Loki, I'm gonna find your daughter. You put those girls somewhere else. No. I know you put those girls somewhere.
Police said they're letting him go today.
I know you know where they are.
Where's my daughter?
Alan, you like roller coasters, correct?
I love roller coasters.
I'm not the biggest fan of roller coasters, but, I have been on a few, usually get roped into them by my kids, and, I've had varying degrees of enjoyment.
Sure.
With the film Prisoners, it was not a cinematic ride that I was looking forward to, okay?
It's a tough subject matter.
Tough. Tells the story of Keller Dover, played by Hugh Jackman, who on Thanksgiving Day has his daughter and her best friend, they go missing.
Yeah.
Dover takes matters into his own hands as the police try to follow multiple different leads. They're headed up the police force by Jake Gyllenhaal, and pressure mounts and things kind of spiral out of control. Alan, what I want to know is, are you glad you took the cinematic ride, and would you encourage others to do so, assuming they meet the age and height requirements? What do you think?
Yeah, age and height requirements. Well, you're right. This was a tough movie for subject matter. It was one I honestly was not looking forward to. You and I both have kids.
Yes.
So I think anytime, as a parent in general, I'm going to say people who don't have their own kids, just the idea of children going missing, being abducted possibly, that's frightening.
Yeah.
And sure enough, there were moments in this film that I was scared out of my mind.
Sure.
I mean, I'm just skin crawling, really tough to know where things were going. And I found myself crossing my fingers in a way a lot, hoping that things were going to go a certain direction and hoping they didn't go a different one. And it was a tough watch. That being said, I thought this was a really, really well-made film with one very big exception for me.
Okay.
This is a 153-minute movie.
Yes.
The last 20 minutes I had a lot of issues with.
Okay.
But the first 120 whatever minutes I really was on board for. I didn't enjoy the ride,
right,
but it was one of those I'm glad I took in hindsight. And for me, it all comes down to the acting. I thought the acting, which I was not expecting it to be strong, from Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm not a big fan of his work. Hugh Jackman, I think, plays Wolverine great, but I'm not a big fan of him in anything else. I thought he was really good.
Okay.
I actually think everybody put in a really good, strong role and turned what could have been a very TV movie type storyline into a well-made film, except for the last 20 minutes, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I wanted to kind of hit all the positives first.
Sure,
Overall,
sure.
I thought it was a very strong film, actually surprisingly strong. Roger Deakins, I believe, was the director of photography.
Yes.
I think that had a lot to do with it as well. I enjoyed watching some of the shot selection and the way the shots were handled, just as much as I enjoyed some of the acting that was on display. What about you?
Sure. I'm kind of in the same ballpark. The acting did make the film kind of stand above your typical, I guess this would be classified as a thriller, crime drama.
Yeah, crime, thriller, mystery. Yeah.
And normally those aren't the type of things I go in for. But, considering the genre that this was, I thought it was, well done. The acting had a lot to do with it, with one exception.
Oh, okay. We'll get to that in a minute. I want to hear your
get to him.
exception. Sure.
And there again, the cinematography also helped to elevate this picture above what it could have been. Interesting that you comment, I guess, the third act per se, the last 20 minutes. I am on the same page. I liked the movie, not the subject matter. I didn't enjoy but thought it was really well done, well paced, let's say.
It was. Mm-hmm.
And there again, this movie does have some kind of twists and turns, so I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm going to see if my point of things going kind of spiraling out of control in a bad way, kind of the wheels falling off the cart. There's a point where someone is being interviewed in the police station.
Yes.
And it goes very badly.
Very badly.
And then shortly thereafter, there's a confrontation between Hugh Jackman's character, the father, and someone else. And there's kind of some exposition, and then it just kind of... And then for the rest of the movie, I'm just
That's about the point. Okay. Yeah. Actually, what I'm going to say, and again, this is not spoiler. I bet Chris, you'll know what I'm talking about. Just for anybody who has seen the film, you'll know what I'm referring to. There's a visual motif that's introduced late in the film that has ramifications to the solving of the mystery.
Yes.
I thought that was very ham-handed, the way it was kind of spoon-fed to us.
I agree.
There was a scene where we have Jake Gyllenhaal's character who, after the interrogation has gone terribly poorly, is at his wit's end. He's kind of really frustrated with this case.
He destroys his desk.
But then lo and behold, a picture lays out that shows this one visual motif that all of a sudden things start clicking together. It almost becomes like your Scooby-Doo mystery solving at this point. And I think when the ultimate bad guy, which I even hate saying in a film like this, but it really almost is that stereotypical at the end, bad guy is revealed. It's just seems, I don't want to say it's over the top, because I understand the story and I could see where the story wants to go with it, but the way it's revealed to us, the way Hugh Jackman's character comes into a realization, the way all these things start to click into place, it was just so force-fed, I felt like, and so cliche what you would expect from a B-level movie, a TV movie type approach to this.
Right.
And that's the shame of it, is that up until that point, this movie was really authentic. It was very thought-provoking. I mean, I was more fascinated learning about the Hugh Jackman character and how he was responding to this situation and the actions he was taking. That to me was more fascinating than the mystery. But they seem to drop all that in the last 20 minutes and say, no, we just want to focus on solving the mystery and unveiling who the bad guy is. And that's where it really lost me in the end.
Yeah, I think basically it's a carbon copy of my notes, because that's kind of how I felt. There were things about the Hugh Jackman character. You learned about some elements of his past, and those threads were just completely discarded. Yeah. And you don't really... you could have gotten so much more understanding. And also, Hugh Jackman's character, like we mentioned in the intro, he takes matters into his own hand. Mm-hmm. So, he is obviously his concerned father. He wants to do whatever it takes. Yes. Kind of the Malcolm X approach, whatever it takes to get his daughter back.
Yes.
That is an interesting line of thinking to go down, and it's a plot line. And how far do you go until you become criminal yourself? And I felt like they didn't allow characters to have any really type of arc. It's like they started out and then they were like, yep, and that's kind of how it is. They didn't allow them to really show a lot of change through the movie.
Well, and that's I kind of see what you're saying there. I think where it really focuses in for me is that we find a lot of these things, we see the emotions of the characters on the onset of the problem or the storyline or the situation, but when the storyline closes, we don't really get any understanding of how it affected them.
Right.
Because again, Hugh Jackman's character goes through the most roller coaster, going back to your example, of what he does, and his storyline is the most fascinating, because honestly, the scenes where he has taken measures into his own hands were, for me, the most interesting. I really wanted to see how far he was going to go.
Right.
He went a lot farther than I thought he was going to go with things, and that's interesting. But then once the movie starts to close, we don't see any resolution of impact on him.
Right.
We don't really know what happens to him because of those choices he made.
The final shot of this film annoyed me so
Well, I was going to ask you about the final shot, because I know what they were trying to do. They didn't want to give you the spoon-fed, tied up in a bow ending. They wanted to leave it a little more ambiguous. But I almost think with a movie like this, we've followed these characters for 2.5 hours. We've seen their characters try to develop. I'm with you. I needed to know what was the end development of these characters.
Okay, here again, I'm going to be dancing the line of being very vague. What was painful to me was there was a get out of jail free card, or an item that was introduced.
Yeah.
And once a character, it kind of recurs to him, I knew from that point in the last 20 minutes when things were kind of, I was like, okay, that is going to come into play. And sure enough, in the final scene of the movie, it could be hinted, but it wasn't hinted. It was like repeated, I think, 4 times. This thing, it was.
They brought up this item several times.
Right.
The wife talking to the cop in the hospital.
And even in that final shot, it wasn't just like, oh, you didn't make the connection. No, it kept hitting you over the head in that final shot, like, oh, here's this connection. Here it is again. Here it is again. Here it is again.
You're right. That whole ending sequence is the ending to a movie where you've got a hero and the hero is able to save the day at the end. Mm-hmm. But that's not the movie we've had up until that point.
Right.
We don't get to close out the Hugh Jackman character story arc sufficiently to know what the ramifications are of the choices made.
And I think, yeah. And it wasn't... to me, it didn't benefit to leave it kind of where they ended it. It would have been more interesting if they would have actually had a little bit of resolution between Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman, because he is a policeman.
That was what I was looking forward to.
This guy has done some things that are not cool.
Well,
and
even
for them, they hint at, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And then there's it just could have been more.
Well, that resolution I sorely missed. I wanted to see that end resolution between those two characters, and even the end resolution between Jake Gyllenhaal and Maria Bello as the wife was very, I thought, just simpleton either. Also, it just didn't give me any depth. It's like, you know what you've all been going through, and now you have learned what your husband has been doing.
Right.
But yet there didn't seem to be any impact from that. It was kind of like, well, okay, yeah, that's that, and move on.
Right.
It's just the whole last 20 minutes was very frustrating to me, because it wouldn't have been frustrating if the rest of the movie had not been so good. But it was more frustrating for me because I really thought the rest of the movie was so well done. And I really bought every action. I bought every emotion. I bought every response to things happening to them. I loved the concept of trying to explore the humanity of what you would do if your child was in this situation. How far would you really go? It's a good age-old question we ask ourselves. How far would we go for the sanctity of our children and their safety? And I think it did a great job of pushing those boundaries and having us ask those questions. It's just, unfortunately, it really dropped the ball in that last 20 minutes. And it just didn't give us any really good resolution for anything to walk away from.
Agreed. I'm going to talk about I kind of let it introduce the fact that there was an acting that I wasn't.
All right, I'm curious. Who is it?
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Really?
I actually kind of like him. I like him in other movies. I'm kind of and in this one, it's not that he did a bad job, but there was something specific. One thing that's not his fault. The other one that I'm assuming it is a choice he made. Was he trying to? Why did he keep blinking?
It's just a physical tick he had, and I thought it was good because it actually got really accentuated during the one of the interrogation scenes, and I think that's where we see that his character was starting to kind of lose it a little bit. He was about at his wit's end. They really played up this whole idea of he's never lost a case or never not solved a case, which could have been a little cliche handled, but I think that pressure was actually really getting to him. And I think I like the fact that he's not a perfect guy. I mean, I love the fact, I'll tell you, I thought his acting was really surprisingly good, only because I had very low expectations for him. I don't like him as an actor in general. But the fact that what I love the most is like, so here he would go into the houses and have to have these conversations, these very sensitive, serious conversations with the parents about their missing children. And it's a very tight, tenuous situation. But he would leave the house, and if he was annoyed by their behavior, he'd kind of show it under his breath, and he'd grumble about it. And he's a human being. He didn't play this super cop where he's just Mr. Hero to everybody. I mean, he was getting annoyed by the family and some of the questions they were asking about their missing child. And you think, okay, that's you wouldn't expect a cop to do that, but he was, because he was very human. The visual tick with the blinking,
it was just a little bit overdone.
It was a little distracting in that one interrogation scene, but again, I think they were really trying to play with the fact that he was starting to kind of mentally break down himself. He had kind of reached the end of his rope. He had to have something resolved, and he wasn't getting it. But I'm surprised that you thought that the acting wasn't that great.
A little, I mean, it wasn't my favorite performance of his, and I'm okay with him. And so right. I kind of thought, I guess it was the thing that I'm not going to blame him for. I guess it's the screenwriter's fault. How can you name him Detective Loki? This is in the age of the Avengers movie and Thor, which,
distracting.
come on. And it's not based on a book. It's his original screenplay. So Detective Loki. Now, granted, can't.
Well, no. Does Loki have? I mean, I know Loki in the Marvel world is the god of mischief. Mm-hmm. I mean, does Loki have any other symbolic references
Not that
maybe
I'm
they were
aware
trying
of,
to
and
tie
it's
in
spelled
here?
the same way
Yeah.
as the Loki from.
I thought that was an odd choice.
Yeah. Something that would so clearly be in pop consciousness that would be distracting.
I will say, I thought Hugh Jackman was really good in this.
Yeah.
There were a couple scenes I kind of felt like he was overacting and maybe kind of playing to the camera, but it was very, very few. And for the range that he had to show and the intensity he had to show, after the first few minutes and getting used to his character, I was buying it. Terrence Howard, Viola Davis didn't really have too much to do except just react to a lot of things.
They were the parents of the other child.
Yeah, and I think they were fine. I thought Maria Bello was also a little underused. She was medicated in bed most of the time, which rightfully so. I can understand in that situation.
Sure.
But really, this was down to Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. That's pretty much the two. And then Paul Dano. Now, what did you think of Paul Dano and his character? We're not going to, of course, say too much about the character he was playing, other than he had some mental deficiencies. I guess we could at least leave it at that.
Well, and you can tell from the trailer, he's a suspect.
Yeah. He's a suspect, and he's having to play a character with a very simple mind. How do you think he did?
He did well, but a lot of it I think was the cinematography of Roger Deakins, because he did well. He doesn't have to say a lot. It's all very physicality. I don't know. I mean, he didn't do a bad job. He
didn't really stand out to you.
I think if I was on the Oscar committee and I had to pick something for this movie, probably it would be Hugh Jackman for his, portrayal of the.
I think Hugh Jackman was the strongest I've seen him be, and when things got really intense, he played it well. And I think the scenes between Hugh Jackman's character and Paul Dano's character were my favorite. I hate saying favorite because they were grueling tough scenes. They were the standout scenes.
Sure.
And then also with Roger Deakins in the cinematography, some of the scenes, I'll just say Paul Dano's character in a dark black space.
Nope.
Just seeing an eyeball in some situations was really haunting.
Nobody does darkness like Deakins.
Wow.
I'm thinking of the James Bond. I finally caught up with Skyfall.
Yeah.
And there were scenes with fire and dark, and he can light darkness. He can make the absence of light really interesting, and it's not frustrating for the viewer. And the reason, if you look at the X-Files TV show, actually, there's always a lot of dark, and they keep things from you, and it just gets irritating because you can't see stuff. He lets you see all that you need to. Yeah. And just the way that he does that is.
I just thought some of those shots were really, really well done.
Agreed.
And, all right, let me just ask you a quick question. I think we're both on the same page. We like the film.
I think you may like it a little bit more than
I think
me.
I do. I think I like it more than you, but we both have real problems with the ending for sure. Yeah, and I hate penalizing an entire movie for the last 20 minutes, but that's the
taste that it leaves.
That
in
is
your
the thing that wraps you up. You gotta nail the ending on a film like this, and I just don't feel like they did. But up until that point, I was really, really appreciating this film.
Well, and I'll say, it is, tough subject matter, as you've heard us talk about. I will say, though, that me not liking this type of film, in general, it's not what I would seek out. It was well done, and I could appreciate it, that it was good in the thriller genre, and it was, it was good. Okay. It was that last 20 minutes that, and I think actually if people go based off the preview thinking it's going to be kind of a Silence of the Lambs, kind of a fast-paced action type thing, you're not going to get that, an action thriller,
It's very deliberately paced. Yeah. I think I credit the director. I think taking what could be a very routine thriller, type of concept and making it a lot deeper, a lot more involved. It's just unfortunately got a little off the rails towards the end, and then the ending really fell apart.
Sure.
Last question I'll ask you, just a real simple one. For anybody else getting ready to watch the film, maybe you can write in about this as well. Tree bark. There's a lot of shots, kind of odd shots, zooming into a tree with a lot of bark, a lot of heavy exposition of bark on the tree.
Okay.
There were at least 3 instances where it almost seemed like they were more fascinated in the shot with the bark than what was maybe going on behind the tree that you were supposed to be maybe paying attention to. Got anything on that, or is that just more of a, here we are shooting and it's kind of cold weather and we're outdoors a lot and we kind of want to play that up?
Well, I wonder if that ties into the motif of the repeated motif that you were talking about that happens in the latter part of the film that plays a part, like how the tree bark looks compared to how. But
We'll just say it has to do with a maze. I'll just say that.
Yeah. So a maze-looking tree bark, how that has different
maybe that could be it. I'm just wondering. I mean, it's probably reaching way too far, but just to know that there were a lot of layers, a lot of levels to things that are covering up what you're seeing, type of thing. Maybe I don't know, but I just noticed the tree bark shots just did jump out at me because they were just enough of them to know that it wasn't just a random shot. There was something intentional going on there.
The movie kind of throws out there in the opening scene morality, and it talks about the morality of like we talked about right and wrong, and that's the one thing that for me it wasn't able to really close on, and you said it wasn't able to close on that either. Not that it has to hit you over the head with its statement, but it just didn't. It got lost.
We just didn't get the closure to these character arcs that really help tie in. I don't need answers. I don't need a resolution, but I at least want to know the impact of this character's arc at the end. I want to know how is it going to affect them, or what questions might it be posing. Right. And the movie just didn't seem interested in closing any of those loops in the last little bit. It was more interested in, we got a mystery, we got a bad guy, we need to show everybody what the bad guy did and why. And that to me was not interesting. So anyway,
Agreed.
Well, that's Prisoners, starring Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal, is out in theaters now. It's been out for a week or two, doing really well, and I think there will probably be some Oscar talk time for maybe some acting somewhere mixed in there. I'd like to think that would happen. So anyway, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to write us at info@themesh.tv or visit themesh.tv website and drop us a line. Let us know what you thought of Prisoners. Next, we're going to go on to our second review, which is the film The Spectacular Now.
My name is Sutter Keeley. I got everything that I need right here. I've got a job, I've got a car, I've got a beautiful girl. I was the life of every party. And you gotta live in the moment. It's about this. This is beautiful.
Hey. Hey.
Where the hell am I?
Do you live around here, Sutter?
How do you know my name?
You go to the same school.
I'm
Amy.
That's what I was gonna say. Nice to meet you, Amy.
So, Chris, I had heard a little bit about The Spectacular Now just through some websites and other film conversations, and it didn't really register too much for me. I mean, when you have a synopsis of the film of a hard-partying high school senior's philosophy on life changes when he meets the not-so-typical nice girl. I'm like, ooh, wow, okay, yeah. There's really nothing I'm too interested in at this point.
Sure.
I don't know anything about the director, James Ponsoldt. Really don't know anything about the screenwriters. It stars Miles Teller, who I don't think I'd really seen in anything before, young actor. It did have Shailene Woodley, which I did remember from The Descendants, and I remembered she was really good in The Descendants. So that was, okay, she's a good actress. That'll be all right. Kyle Chandler, I generally like, and he has a role in the film. So, okay, maybe on the acting side, they've got a couple interesting things going on. But then, I got to admit, Chris, you kind of showed your hand a little bit on this film.
I did.
See, you broke a Footcandle tradition.
It's true.
We normally don't talk about these films until we've had a chance to sit down here and review them together.
Correct.
But you intentionally told me, you said, oh, have you seen The Spectacular Now? I said, no.
Because we were setting up the movie.
He's like, oh, you really need to go see it. I'm like, so you basically showed your hand that you like this film.
That's true.
Okay, so that's already out in the open.
Chris likes
nothing,
this film.
nothing to unveil here.
True.
Chris liked this film. So let me turn the tables on you.
Okay.
What do you think I thought of this film? Based on what you know about me and the type of film this was, I go in with Chris Fry's stamp of approval, which is normally has a pretty high standard to it.
The problem
what did you think of it?
The problem is I probably set the bar. You know, it's all movie going is all about the time you see the movie, your expectation walking in, all these factors. I think I probably set the bar too high for you. So I think you probably thought it was okay, but I think you thought it was okay. It was an okay movie, but you're probably not as over the moon about The Spectacular. You probably would not say it's The Spectacular Now. You would say it's the
I'd say
it's the okay now.
It's the okay now. And you're about right. I did think this was a good movie, but it didn't bowl me over in any way.
Really?
I will tell you, well, I want to hear your positives on it. I will say right off the bat, acting wise, Miles Teller, Shailene Woodley, these two are going to be stars. They were awesome. They made this movie for me enjoyable to watch. So I'm going to close out my positives with that.
Wow.
No. Not to say the movie was bad in any way, shape, or form. It was a good movie. It's just, it was an acting tour de force for these two. If you had put average actors into this role, into this movie and this story, it would have been nothing.
Right.
And that's my thing. I think the story was very mediocre, very run by the numbers. Oh, yeah.
Disagree.
No, I thought it was very by the numbers. I thought it was a very simple storyline that if you had put poor actors in those roles, this would have been a horrible, forgettable movie. That's my take on it. So I want to hear what you liked.
The two leads were surprisingly, shockingly good to me. I did not recognize Miles Teller at all. And I recognized Shailene Woodley by her face, but I couldn't remember what she was in.
Right.
And just the chemistry they had together and the way they related to each other just seemed to be very natural. And what struck me was this was kind of a, coming of age story, but I thought it was very un-Hollywood, and it was very natural. The whole film was I thought the relationships they explored were natural. I thought it was the thing that veered off the typical path for me of a teen movie that has some funny elements and it has some romance elements. The thing that veered off that path, and I thought did so in an interesting way and was well handled in something I'd never seen before, was Sutter Keeley, who's Miles Teller's character. He's the guy in the film. He has problems with alcohol. And the way that was handled, I had never seen before in a film that was of this type. And then I also thought it was interesting how they handled dysfunctional families. And not just one character had both Amy, the girl in the story, and Sutter, both of them came from homes that were a little less than ideal. And I thought the way that it was handled, and I don't know, I just really, and I'd come to find out the writers of the film were responsible for 500 Days of Summer.
Oh, okay.
And so,
which I liked.
And the director, I have not seen his previous movie. It was, you may have wanted to mention it. You'll probably have heard of it. It was called Smashed, and it was about, and it dealt with alcoholism as well. So I really thought it was interesting, and it was curious to me how there could be enough funny moments in it, but they weren't over the top. It was just enough not to make it a completely heavy. And I didn't feel like it was heavy. If you talk about teen alcoholism and peer pressure, and both kids are getting ready to graduate. So if you talk about having to go to the real world and alcoholism and dealing with sex, and you just think, it just sounds like it would be a miserable movie-going experience. And it wasn't. I really like this movie. I can't speak highly enough of it, actually.
And I still am going on record saying I like it.
Sure.
So I don't want anybody writing in saying, okay, Alan didn't like this movie. And
so
I don't want this to be the movie that gets brought up in future episodes. Well, you didn't like The Spectacular Now. No, I did. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Okay. I enjoyed it. Here's my thing, though.
Sure.
I still stand by the fact that, yes, I was interested with the alcoholism tangent, the family dysfunction dynamics, but I still felt like the way that the story handled it was very pedestrian.
Wow.
I just thought there again, we've seen this story before. Popular kid starts to fall for not so popular kid. You find out popular kids actually got a lot of baggage behind them and things that are causing them to make it up in that personality that they exude. And somehow the person that's not as popular or not as well liked helps bring that out of them a little bit, and they help each other out. I've seen this story plenty of times.
Well, I think the way they didn't solve his problem was not solved. He had an alcohol problem, and the girl that he meets, the nice girl, she doesn't have glasses and is dressed all dorky and everything. So you don't see it like in a typical Hollywood movie, you would see her progress from this braces wearing, glasses wearing.
They didn't go that Hollywood movie. I agree. It was much more grounded in reality.
And the girl, just like a teenager, she actually starts seemingly drink as well.
Well, see, here's my question then. Let me get off on my little soapbox here.
That was actually interesting.
You brought up the alcoholism thing, and yes, that does play a big part in the movie. But does it really? Here's the thing: we see them drinking a lot. Like him especially, and then she starts drinking.
Yeah.
Now, yes, part of the drama towards the end, a very kind of a shocking turn towards the end of the film where things really start to go down a bad path. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is tied to alcoholism, but it's more tied to the family dynamics, the father-son relationship that the main character has.
Yeah. That's
the real driver for what causes the problems. It's not the drinking, I don't think. The drinking, I think, is a way of covering the pain, as opposed to the alcohol being the problem for his relationships. I think the problem for his relationships is he's got a dad that is basically a really scummy guy.
Yeah.
And Sutter's finding that out slowly but surely, a guy that he had put up on such a high pedestal all of his life.
Yeah.
He's now learning the reality of it. That's what's causing his problems. That's what causes, in a way, the accident that happens later on in the film. That's what causes a lot of his relationships to start to deteriorate. The alcohol is just there to mask it. And I don't feel like we really got any good, clear... I don't think it gave us, for somebody, a younger person watching this, unfortunately, I don't think it really tells you that alcoholism is bad. for kids. In fact, Shailene Woodley's character Amy is like drinking every single time we see her later in the film. And there's no resolution to that. They're drinking up until the one time she offers him a drink towards the end and he says, no thanks. That was the only clearing the air of the whole alcohol thing that happened. So I almost think they were kind of skirted around the whole alcohol thing. They focused it more on father-son dynamic, which I thought was well handled. But I thought that was just interesting towards the end.
Well,
I just didn't feel like they really shone a spotlight on saying, okay, listen, hey, this guy has been using alcohol to cover his pain, and that alcohol has been causing problems as well. And it was almost like that was just all an afterthought.
Well, I agree that they did not, it was troublesome that Amy's character started drinking, and that was never kind of touched on. You see Sutter kind of maybe take a step back, but that's not really well resolved. But I found that to be very true to me, speaking of people graduating high school, getting ready to go off to college. She had examined this. It's not problematic for her, but you learn in her past, her father committed suicide from painkillers or something. Yeah. So there's like addictive personalities running around. And
I guess that's what's worried me is that if for a movie that's really shining a spotlight on genetic traits passed down that kids are having to wrestle with. I mean, basically, Sutter doesn't want to be like his dad. Okay. I mean, that's he realizes that. He knows that. And that's his major breakdown is that he starts to realize that, oh my gosh, I'm becoming like my father and I don't want to be like that. For that to be such an important theme, but yet we've got Amy as a character who I really loved her character. I mean, she, no offense, I hope my wife isn't listening to this, but this is the kind of girl I would have like pined after in high school. Absolutely. Yeah. Just phenomenal character.
Yeah.
And I felt bad because we saw her starting to pick up the drink every single time now, but yet we know her father had an addictive personality and that's never talked about. There's never a sign of, oh my gosh, Amy, you need to stop because look, I'm learning what I'm learning about my father and how it's affecting me now. Oh my gosh, why about you? And now you could say that that's not the point of the story and we're kind of left to know that they've still got a much longer story to tell for these two characters as they grow together. But it's still...
Absolutely. And the final scene, I think, is open as to what's going to happen. But I like the way I liked how it was dealt with and I liked how it cut. And I was like, good.
No, I did like... Comparing Prisoners and this one, that final shot, we got a very similar shot, which granted, I saw both these movies in the same night. So the similarities, I had fun picking them apart. They both end with a kind of a abrupt cut shot of one person and their reaction to the situation. And that's it.
Yeah.
But with this one, it was a much more satisfying ending, absolutely, than they went with. No, believe me, I'm nitpicking a few things here about the themes and about the storyline in general. But I will say, I mean, I was truly moved in some parts of the film by just the performances alone. Miles Teller as Sutter, he annoyed me the first half of the movie, but that was on purpose. You are to be annoyed by his character. He's so over the top and just so much wanting to be the life of the party. But you realize why he's doing that, and it made that performance in the first half of the movie that much stronger.
His scene with, you mentioned some of the supporting characters. Bob Odenkirk is also in this movie.
Are you going to talk about the scene between the two of them, the last scene?
And I love Bob Odenkirk.
It was a perfect scene.
And the scene where Bob Odenkirk is his boss, and he has a scene with his boss towards the latter half of the film.
Yep,
and that was amazing.
That one got me.
And a lesser, Bob Odenkirk has some funny things in there, which, he's from Mr. Show and everything. But his ability to handle serious subject matter and to handle that scene I was like, man, this guy's so good.
That was a really good scene. Actually, that's my standout.
Apparently he's in Breaking Bad, and I have never seen that show. No. So I haven't seen him in a dramatic role, but, just...
That was a standout scene for me. And I think the line, if you were my father, you wouldn't have to type of... And that was really punching the gut.
Yes.
So good.
Well done.
I'm with you on that. You got Brie Larson, who I know, she's someone who's really up and coming in Hollywood right now, a lot of films.
Oh, okay.
She starred as Cassidy, the ex-girlfriend. I thought she was good too. I mean, but really this was these two, this is, Miles and Shailene's movie from top to bottom. I mean, if you didn't buy their relationship, for me, the movie wouldn't work at all. It would have been really dull and just no point to it.
And that's what's so impressive to me is not unknowns, but, smaller names in Hollywood. And for them to carry this entire movie was very, very impressive.
So I will say, I really liked it. I certainly recommend it to people. I did have some issues with the themes and the story, but not an issue at all with the acting or the directing of it. I mean, I think it was very, very well made. So if you see the previews for this and you think it's just going to be a teen romantic comedy thing, no.
Don't let that fool you.
It's a lot better and a lot deeper than that. It does take some pretty serious turns, kind of shocking turns, honestly. I was a little taken aback at some points, but it needed to get there to get to the end. So good movie. It was a good movie. I probably liked it less than you. I think we're flip-flopped on this a little bit.
Seems like we are.
I still appreciated it, though, and I'm really anxious to see what these guys do next. Interesting, because I always bring in the superhero comic book movie references here.
Okay.
Both these lead characters, Shailene Woodley, was cast for a certain amount of time, but then let go, supposedly, where she was going to be cast as Mary Jane Watson in the whole Spider-Man reboot series that they're working on now. The next Amazing Spider-Man movie.
Sure.
Supposedly she was hired for some parts of a scene, but then they cut her part from this movie, and there's been rumors that she's being recast or whatever. So she was, for a while, going to be Mary Jane, the new Mary Jane in the Spider-Man movies.
She would have been great.
And then Miles Teller has been rumored as being cast in the reboot of the Fantastic Four as Mr. Fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, just kind of interesting how these two, I was glad I got to see them in a very small independent film before they start going out and making big blockbuster movies, because I think this gives us a little more appreciation for them that we probably would not get in those bigger movies. So anyway.
Okay.
So that's our reviews of both Prisoners and The Spectacular Now. Both of them, good movies, definitely worth seeking out. Some misgivings on both sides for each film, but overall, I think we still say, yes, you should check these films out. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hit some movie news. We're going to dip into the inbox a little bit, answer a couple reader questions, and cap it off with our movie recommendation for the episode. Stay tuned. You're listening to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv.
Hi, I'm Champions Tour player Kenny Perry. Please join me in a fantastic field of Champions Tour players for the 11th annual Greater Hickory Kia Classic at Rock Barn, October the 14th through the 20th. Weekly ground badges are just $50. Individual tickets are $20 per day, with proceeds going to charity. Get your tickets today at GreaterHickoryKiaClassic.com.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films. This is Alan and Chris talking about movies. We just finished our reviews of Prisoners and The Spectacular Now. Let's move on, Chris, to before we get into our news that we'd like to talk about. We do get some emails in occasionally. We addressed a couple, I think, the last episode or two. Just some viewer questions we get or feedback. We always want as much feedback as possible. So, guys, please send it in. We'd love questions. We'd love your own opinions of the films we reviewed. You can send it in by email at info@themesh.tv, or you can just go to themesh.tv website and there's a contact us form right there. Just say, this is for Footcandle. I got a question. And the people responsible will make sure it gets to our inbox. But Chris, we reviewed 2 films last episode, and we did get questions about both films and our take on them.
Okay.
So I just thought, let's kind of focus on just these 2 since they are related to the last episode.
Sure.
We had somebody write in, and this was Mike, saying, are you being harsh on the butler because it was too similar to Forrest Gump? Supposedly what Mike was saying is that just he's read a lot of analysis as well, that people are kind of knocking the film down a lot because it resembled Forrest Gump a little too much with the progression age of the character and being involved in major historical events and all that, and kind of being a behind the scenes character, but yet these big prominent things are going on around the world. He just wondered because we were both a little on the negative side about the butler. We both had you were much more negative.
Yeah.
I was negative, not as passionately as you were. Mike's just wondering, are we just being a little too harsh on the butler here? Do you think that that's a valid criticism of it being too similar to Forrest Gump?
I will defend my harshness towards the butler. And my harshness towards the butler has nothing to do with the Forrest Gump aspect.
Okay.
That's actually kind of what kept me involved in the film. What I did not like was the son subplot thing, which wasn't a subplot. It was like equally as important as the butler. And it felt to be based on a true story, which you get into murky territory there anyway. But to have that whole subplot thing, I just wish that could have been cut out of the movie. It would have made it shorter, and it would have been more interesting to follow the Forrest Gump progression of the butler. Instead, we had this other ham-fisted storyline of the son, and that's where my appreciation for the film just
so you really don't think the
gutter.
Forrest Gump comparison threw you off in your review at all?
That's not what made it. I think, the comparison is fair to make, I think, but that's not what made it bad for me. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And I want to say, I hope I'm being real to myself and saying that, no, it didn't affect my criticism of the film either. As I look back on it and think about it, it's like, yeah, it was a lot of similarities. And maybe because Forrest Gump's one of those movies that, I don't know, for some reason it's always on TV. So maybe it's still a cultural touchstone as far as a movie goes. You hear about it so much. Maybe that was influencing me a little bit and saying, okay, yeah, so here's the Forrest Gump moment. Now he meets JFK and now he's into this conversation. And maybe that did. I don't know. But I'd like to think it didn't. But, you know, film criticism, I mean, we are subconsciously influenced by some of the things around us.
You can't unsee Forrest Gump once you've seen it.
There's every possibility that may have been the case. Who knows? But Mike, we really try to make sure other films don't influence our reviews of the film that we're talking about. So another one, and this is a criticism of a film that we both really liked, Much Ado About Nothing. We've got Amy writing in and saying the language of Much Ado About Nothing was jarring and brought me out of the movie. I guess she's referring to the original Shakespeare text being spoken by modern day characters.
Sure.
She said it made the movie seem fake and too much of a vanity piece. So, Chris, your response to that, did having these modern day actors in a modern day setting reciting exact Shakespeare text for their dialogue, did that bring you out of the movie at all?
Okay, she's got an interesting point. Okay, did the Shakespeare bring it out of? No, it did not for me. But I knew going in that they were going to be speaking that dialect, and I was able to. It was bumpy at first, like we mentioned in our review. Yeah. It was kind of bumpy at first, but then I followed along, and it was no problem. Now, the part where she mentions vanity piece, I will say that, yeah, it basically is probably a vanity piece for Joss Whedon. It's kind of a stunt. I think it's amazing he pulled it off. I appreciated it. But is it kind of a throwaway vanity piece? He was kind of wanted to prove he could do it. Well, yeah, but I don't, that's not a slight, but I will agree with her that it probably is a vanity piece. So.
Okay, well, fair enough. I think I had a little bit of that same comment if it was a bit of a vanity piece as well. You get your best friends together, your acting buddies, you hang out at your house for a long week, you film this. Oh, cool, let's make it modern day. Oh, let's make it black and white. Oh, let's do the old English. Yeah, it's a little bit of I want to do something on my own that's just really kind of appealing to me in a way. But I think Joss Whedon, he's earned it. I mean, he just directed one of the biggest blockbusters known to man.
Which
special effects.
I'm on record as not liking.
Yeah, we are quite aware of that, Chris. Thank you for reminding us again. So you know what? He's earned it. If he wants to do a little black and white Shakespeare adaptation in his house, go for it. You know, I think the experimental nature of it won me over versus it being a vanity piece. So,
and I think it would have been to adapt it to where they would have been speaking, you know, regular English, everyday, modern day English. It would have been like 10 Things I Hate About You or any of those romantic comedies that they've made. They've kind of updated Shakespeare and they totally changed the language and it's in color and it's usually starring teen. You know, that would have just been, I wouldn't have been interested probably in seeing it at all.
Right, sure.
But the fact that he did what he did, that made it more interesting to me.
Okay.
So.
Great. Well, that's just a couple things from the inbox I wanted to pull out because they were specifically related to our show from last episode. Sure. So let's move on to some movie news, Chris. And I always like to kind of have a theme around our movie news just because, I mean, there's so much news out there in the movie world. I could go any direction with this. But I like to kind of pick a theme. Okay. All right. So the theme this week is 3 news items about films that are being either remade or sequelized that should they be? Okay. That's kind of the question to you.
Okay.
Is there any logical, rational reason for these films we're going to talk about to be remade or rebooted or sequelized?
Okay.
Well, first off, a picture was posted just last few days by a Mr. Jeff Daniels. You know the actor Jeff Daniels.
Oh, I think I've heard.
He and Jim Carrey.
Yep, I've heard.
On set of Dumb and Dumber 2.
Spelled just T-O?
T-O, right. Now, it should be noted, Dumb and Dumber, the Farrelly Brothers comedy from many years ago, actually 1994.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? Almost 20 years ago.
Very crazy.
Comedy, obviously, you know, a lot of people really like this film. I personally think it's hilarious. I think it's funny. It was probably one of the few Farrelly Brothers movies I really enjoyed. Most of them I generally think don't work very well.
Sure.
But they have reunited for an official sequel. There was a sequel many years ago. Yeah, Dumb and Dumberer, which supposedly was horrible. I never saw it. Hardly anybody from the original film was associated with it. It was really a bad film from what I understand. Okay. But now they're making...
It was like their earlier days.
Yeah, it was them as like kids.
Right.
Supposedly this is them now, the picture. I mean, they're back in their same garb with the same haircuts. And, you know, they look older, but they look like they're having fun with it. So your standpoint, should this even be a movie that is being having millions of dollars poured into it right now?
Well, I have seen the original, but wasn't blown away. I saw it kind of after the curve. So by the time I saw it, I thought it was okay, but not as maybe as hyped as everybody else had said it was. Because you have all the original parties involved, sure, they're not remake, they're just doing a sequel. Or
it is truly a sequel, not a remake. Yeah.
So, yeah, sure, why not? And I think Jim Carrey is a talented individual, and he's kind of been off the radar, except for Kick-Ass 2, which I did not see.
I did not either.
Yeah, and I like Jeff Daniels a lot. So,
Jim Carrey hasn't had a really big starring role in a movie in a good long time, I don't think. So,
sure.
I'll be curious to see, can they rekindle some of that magic with them? I will just say, for those of you that are fans of the film,
the Fairleys are attached.
Yes, they are making it.
Yeah.
I will say, for those of you that are fans of the film, they also posted another photograph recently of a certain character that does make a return appearance in this film. Little boy, wheelchair-bound boy that owned the parakeet, I believe, and the bird in the first film, supposedly comes back.
Alan is clearly a fan because I've seen the movie, but I have no idea what he's talking about.
Pretty bird. Pretty bird. No, you don't remember that? Okay.
No,
right.
I need to see it again.
All
clearly.
Right. Next one. And I'm getting progressively to ones that may or may not infuriate Chris Fry.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that one was the least offensive one.
Right, yeah.
All right, next. So they've been rumoring about making a sequel to Independence Day for a really long time, and it never got off the ground. Will Smith, starring, and Jeff Goldblum starring.
After Earth went so well.
Well, director Roland Emmerich is making the Independence Day sequel, scheduled for 2015.
How does that guy still get money? He did Godzilla, and didn't he do 2012?
Yes, he did.
The Day After Tomorrow. How does he still get money?
I don't know. But supposedly Will Smith not getting involved, which is surprising based on how bad After Earth was. You would almost think, I need to piggyback onto a big sequel once again. But right now they're rumoring that somebody that you appreciated in a recent film you saw in Fruitful Station, Michael B. Jordan, may be coming on board as the big star. It's a rumor right now, but
if he's looking at it as a paycheck, I'd understand. But
yeah.
Maybe
I guess in the end, an actor, most actors, now I won't say all, because I think there are some actors out there that are going to refuse tentpole franchises and all that because they really are I want to do these really quality films. I don't need the paycheck.
Right.
But most actors, I think like anybody else in society, if you got somebody waving a whole bunch of money to you and say, all you got to do is work for a few months on a movie that may not be good, and be a lot of special effects and working in front of green screen, but hey, here's millions of dollars. Don't you want this? I think it'd be crazy for some actors to not go that route.
The challenge will be, we'll probably end up seeing it and reviewing it for the show because it'll be a big tentpole movie. Is it possible for me to like it less than Independence Day? That's my challenge.
You didn't care for Independence Day.
Oh, I hated it.
I figured you probably
hated that movie.
I will say I
was so excited because I love sci-fi.
I have mixed feelings because I saw it in a very fun environment with a lot of people on opening weekend, and it was a big spectacle. I kind of remember that night because it was a fun night watching a big dumb blockbuster movie.
Oh, it was
but
dumb.
on repeat viewings, no, it's a bad movie. So I'm with you on that.
Okay.
All right, last one.
Yes.
This was the one that may make you the maddest.
Oh, okay. They're remaking 2001. That would make me mad.
Yeah, it's 2001-2. So that's what they're calling it.
Okay.
They're remaking Poltergeist. How do you feel about it? Just on the surface, without even knowing the people involved, how do you feel?
Okay, so I don't know anybody involved. Yeah, I had not heard they were remaking it.
They had to remake. Come on, they're remaking everything, especially the horror films.
I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah. Okay,
who's involved? Tell me who's involved.
Sam Rockwell.
Well,
Rosemary DeWitt.
Who's she again? I've recognized the name.
Shoot.
Where's the intern?
Yeah, our intern left for lunch.
They get to eat?
What did Rosemary DeWitt?
I recognize the name.
Wasn't she in Your Sister's Sister?
Maybe.
I think so.
Okay.
Anyway, she's done a lot of quality films. She's not a big name actress, but she's done a lot of good independent films, I believe. Okay. Sam Rockwell, Rosemary DeWitt, and then you've got Gil Keenan directing, who did Monster House, the animated film.
Okay.
Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I did. It was okay. Mm-hmm. He's directing?
Yep.
Huh. So Spielberg's not attached in any way, shape, or form?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I don't believe so. Anyway,
Do you know, this is going to be a very crazy question.
Sure.
There's a reason I'm asking it. What's it going to be rated?
I don't know.
What kind of audience did they have?
They haven't gotten far along in that to show and talk about it yet. But
that's what was good. Poltergeist was, if I'm not mistaken, it was PG.
Oh, it was PG. This is before PG-13 days.
But it was a classic. It's a classic horror movie or scary movie. I wouldn't even call it horror. It's not a horror movie.
No.
But, it's got some jumps and stuff, but it's not bloody. It's not gory. It's just, it's, I don't know. It's such a classic and so well done that I think it's a tough one. I mean, I can understand if you're going to remake. Sam Rockwell.
To me, remaking Friday the 13th, remaking some of these other classic horror films, I don't see a problem with that because those films are considered classics because of the type of film it was, not for the filmmaking craft of it.
Sure.
Poltergeist was a really well-made film.
Right. It had imagery of like the doll and like the TV set. Like there was all these things going on that I just don't see. Just like I didn't see a reason why, and I've never seen it in protest, why they remade Psycho.
Yeah, and that was a failed experiment there as well. So David Lindsay Abaire is the screenwriter, and his credits are very mixed. Okay. He's done Oz the Great and Powerful. He did the screenplay for that.
Okay.
He did Rise of the Guardians, an animated film. He did Rabbit Hole, which was the who's the director? John. You know what I'm talking about. Nicole Kidman.
Yeah. He did Hedwig too.
Yes, right. Can't remember his last name. Interns.
Mitchell. John Cameron Mitchell.
God, we really need those interns to stay through much. He also did the screenplay for Robots. I mean, he's done like a mix of animated films and a couple non-animated ones thrown in. So it's an interesting choice, both in director and in the screenwriter. So I don't know. I think it's a bad idea. I think there's so much with the original Poltergeist. It's just I just don't see how you can match it unless you've just got to go a completely different direction with the story. But
what I'm afraid of is I have such fond memories of that film. I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but I did really like it. And in today's, they're just rebooting stuff. It's like they run out of original ideas for horror movies because those make a lot of money. They release them at, around Halloween and stuff, and they just churn them out like Insidious 5000 or whatever the
Are they up to 5,000? I thought they were just at 3,800.
Actually, I guess it's Paranormal Activity 5,000. That should be. But, it's just like they can't leave good enough alone with horror movies. They do something like Blair Witch, but then they have to do Blair Witch 2. It's like they just can't. And I understand it's money making and everything, but still, it's a shame to me because the original kernel was so good. So I wish they would just leave that enough alone. But, I could be wrong, and maybe they have a really original take. But the fact that Spielberg's not involved and they're not – an interesting thing would be to see what the original character – like if they were – Craig T. Nelson was that?
Like seeing like that character all these years
somehow
later
like how are they now? Or like, did they –
I almost think if they're going to do it, break from the original altogether, go in a completely different path.
So totally
don't even reference the other people. Because I think if they start to do stunt casting and get Craig T. Nelson to play some little bit role, I think that's gotten annoying. I mean, if you're going to do something, if it's the idea of a family moving into a haunted house and the daughter gets abducted by ghost demons, whatever it is, and they have to save her. If that's your story, that's your Poltergeist story, there's a lot of different ways you could interpret that story and do it differently to give us something new, a fresh look at it. Yeah. If they just try to repeat the formula and a lot of the beats and bring in the stunt casting of old cast members, I'm not interested at that point. So...
Okay. Yeah.
So that's our movie news. So it sounds like with all three, like I kind of anticipated the level of your level of frustration with it grew with each one. I kind of anticipated staging them out that way for you. So Hollywood is just going to keep remaking and rebooting. There's nothing we can do about it, Chris. Nothing we can do. Let's wrap up the show here. We're running a little long, but let's go ahead and wrap up with our recommendations for viewers to check out and watch. So Chris, what have you got for us that people ought to check out online or renting that they may have missed?
I'm going to recommend a comedy, although it does have some dark elements to it, dark comedy, called The Brass Teapot. And it was from 2012. I think it was made then, I think also released, but I didn't hear about it till this year. But anyways, it's available on Netflix, and you can rent or purchase it in iTunes. But it's a story, there again, The Brass Teapot. It is about a teapot that basically...
It's a literal story
It is
title.
about a teapot.
Yeah. Okay.
That lets a couple finds this teapot, and they learn that they get money from it if they hurt themselves. And so they start to hurt themselves because they're, they're a young couple. They don't have a lot of money. They're very frustrated with things. And so... they start to take it and start hurting themselves so that they can get money, and they end up getting this really nice house and the problems that it causes. But there are some very funny elements as well. So there's some funny, and the music of the movie is really good, and the shots, some of the cinematography is really nice. So I recommend The Brass Teapot, and I think it fell under the radar, and for some reason, I think it has a really bad Rotten Tomato score, which I find to be surprising. It's like 20%,
Wow,
which is
really?
like After Earth quality.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I thought this was much better than that, so I recommend it. Check it out.
Oh, interesting. Well, you definitely pulled one out of the hat there for that. So mine, I know I've mentioned it on the show before, but I don't think I've ever given it as an official recommendation. Paul Thomas Anderson, a filmmaker I really like.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's okay. Boogie Nights is one of my favorite films. I did think that The Master, we talked about on the show, very good movie as well. Really enjoyed that one. He's had a couple that didn't work as well for me. There Will Be Blood. I was one of the people that just was a little more down on that film than I think others were. I need a second viewing on that one. I haven't got around to that second viewing yet. But the one that I think is probably the most divisive with the most people is Magnolia.
Oh, man. Is that what you're recommending is Magnolia?
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
It's a long movie, which is problem number one. It is a little bit of a vanity piece. I'll go ahead and say it right up there. I think when he did Hard Eight, first film, then he did Boogie Nights, I think he just wanted to go full tilt, make the most big ensemble cast, just get as many people involved in this thing and kind of explore all these different storylines and go a little crazy at the end and all. I think he maybe saw this as his film to go big. And I think Magnolia, I got a feeling may have burned him a little bit because if you look at his films after Magnolia,
Toned him back down.
they did tone back down. You got Punch Drunk Love, which was a very small film.
Which I like.
Oh, I like too. Then he went with There Will Be Blood. Then he went with Master. So they've been a little smaller in scope.
I can't wait for him to go crazy again.
Well, Magnolia is broad sweeping.
Oh, yeah.
I watched it again last week. I was curious. I hadn't seen it so long. The first 15 minutes of the film just is so breakneck, fast-paced, so much being thrown at you, and I love every minute of it. The movie still works. I do agree it loses a little steam as you get later in the film. The first half, I think, is so much better than the second. But, man, there's some good moments in this film. Best thing Tom Cruise has ever done. I'll go ahead and say that.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
It almost convinced me he was an actor.
Well, he's shockingly good in this film.
He was nominated, wasn't he?
I think he was, or if he wasn't, he should have been.
Man.
Everybody's at their A game on this film. It is a very extreme film in so many ways, in that not only the number of characters they throw at you, the number of storylines you follow, the amount of information you're getting pushed, the fast pace of editing. This is a much, much quicker film, even though it lasted 3 hours, as far as shots and cuts and moving in the first half of the film than any other film he's done, I think. But I still love it. I think it's a great film. I mean, you've got frogs raining down at the end of the film. You've got characters all breaking into song midway through the film.
Amazing music by Amy Mann.
Yes, it is. So great movie. I've watched most of it again the other night and still was really enthralled by it. So I don't think I'd made that a recommendation before. I know I've mentioned it when we talked about Paul Thomas Anderson in the past. It's not my favorite of his still. I still love Boogie Nights better. But this one, after another viewing, keeps jumping up on my list of...
Magnolia is definitely my favorite of his.
Is it? Yeah. John C. Reilly, really good in this film.
And pretty much made Philip Seymour Hoffman, I think.
Yeah, his role was his role was a fairly small role in the film compared to the others, but I think it was the first time people really got a look at him and really seeing him act and get a meaty role to work on.
Yeah.
Good.
I remember, I'll say one thing too. I remember it came out at the same time as American Beauty. I believe the same year.
Might have been.
And it struck me because both had different, for some reason they seemed very similar, like exploring like the American life. And it was like American Beauty was the more homogenized, non-risk-taking version. I still like the movie okay. And then Magnolia was this sprawling, crazy masterpiece. And I just loved it.
And it's just the whole theme of the film is people, the connections and the coincidences and the things that ramifications of one encounter have on another. And it's just this sprawling patchwork of characters and people. And you may get halfway through it like somebody in my household that was watching it with me, I'm not going to name names, said, it's like, I don't see the point. And I can see people saying that after about halfway through the movie. I don't see the point of the film. And it's really just what they're trying to get across, what P.T. Anderson's trying to do is this whole idea of things are connected. There are coincidences we can't explain. There are connections that we don't always see on the surface that do have impacts on one another. And when you look at it from that bird's eye view, you see those connections and they start to make sense. But then you can also throw completely random things that have no connection to anything in their way. And everybody has a shared experience from that. Right. So anyway, I really like it. Cool. I'm glad to know you do too. I think I knew that already. Okay, Chris, we have talked a good while. We have covered a lot of ground. We talked about a couple films, gave some reviews. We talked about some remakes that should or should not be considered right now by Hollywood. But I don't know if they'll be listening to this episode. Maybe take our advice. I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
You never know.
Maybe we'll see the number of remakes decrease over the next few years. Who knows? My name's Alan, and this is Chris. We're again with Footcandle Film Society, which is the group that kind of helps support this podcast. We do film screenings in the Catawba Valley area, at least on a monthly basis at our local theater, and have a large membership of people that we enjoy watching films with. And then, of course, we do this show here on the Mesh Network. TheMesh.tv is the website you can go to see all of the Mesh shows. You can see our back episodes. You can see episodes of other shows. They're all available for free online to view, listen to, subscribe on iTunes. We would love to get some more feedback on our iTunes page for Footcandle Films. Just do a search in iTunes for Footcandle. You will find our show and subscribe to it. And then feel free to give us a star rating and also write a review if you'd like. We'd love to hear from you there. And of course, you can drop us a line at info@themesh.tv for any emails, questions, feedback, your own reviews of films. We'd love to hear from you. So until next time, we will look forward to talking to you then. Again, I'm Alan. This is Chris with Footcandle Films. Take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.